After 3 years of support, Microsoft has cut off the first Surface Duo from security updates, effectively bringing the device to the end of its life as a smartphone. What's worse, with the combined scaling back of Microsoft's niche products and departure of Panos Panay, it likely also means the end of the Surface Duo line for the foreseeable future. As someone who's been using Duo devices since the 2020 launch and finds them much more useful than any other smartphone form factor, it sucks to see that happen. Still, I kind of get it. These devices are fantastic, but have had software issues since launch, contributing to them never selling in high volume outside heavily discounted secondhand marketplaces. When I demoted my Duo 1 from my primary device status about 2 years ago, I left mostly frustrated with the continued software issues I kept coming across. Nothing was overly dramatic or stopped me from using the device altogether, but small quirks like which screen was active, accidental screen touches, and occasionally sluggish performance made me more than ready to spend more time with the Fold 3 I'd just gotten. My entire first year with the device was spent with Android 10 though. And for those unfamiliar, Android 10 was not designed with dual screen or foldables in mind. Microsoft literally duct taped as many extra features and compatibility use cases as they could to the unoptimized OS without forking Android altogether. The jankiness I felt was reflective of the jankiness they'd created. However, an Android 11 update in early 2022 baked a lot of those features directly into the operating system, reducing a lot of the stability issues present after the Duo's bugs at launch were squashed. Now it's on an even more optimized version of Android 12, with most of those initial issues nowhere to be seen. Given that, and the fact that you can find one of these for less than $300 these days, should you still buy a Surface Duo? To answer that question myself, I reactivated my Surface Duo, and then I shifted to using it as my only phone for about 3 weeks. My immediate reaction was a reminder as to why I enjoyed the device so much in the first place. Physically, it's a stark contrast from the Surface Duo 2 I typically use on a daily basis. It's much lighter, much thinner, and provides a stronger illusion of a tablet split down the middle than the curved glass of the Duo 2. While nowhere near as premium feeling as its successor, it feels oddly good returning to it and having the screen fold back flat due to the lack of a camera bump. Of course, that missing bump is a double-edged sword, since the camera on the original Duo is pretty much unusable. The external camera on the Duo 2 has been great and extremely important for quick photos or scanning menu QR codes at restaurants. As it was back in the Android 10 days, the camera here might as well be non-existent due to the acrobatics needed to use it as a right-handed person. Though, to be honest, it's not the biggest loss in my book. As for usage on a daily basis, I haven't noticed a ton of differences in general performance compared to either my Duo 2 or my Fold 4. Even as someone who regularly forgets to close apps and often runs battery saver to delay charging as long as possible, the Duo is still an incredibly snappy phone, despite powering 2 displays and its Snapdragon 855 SoC being over 4 years old at this point. It just goes to show that most people could probably buy older phones and still be happy with the general performance. A lot of the smoothness may also come from the fact that this is running Android 12, which is far less cumbersome than Android 10 was years ago. While I wish the Duo were getting additional OS updates in the future, I'm actually completely fine with the state of Android 12 on this device. Over the past few weeks, my only reoccurring issue has been the device occasionally not wanting to rotate back to portrait mode while auto-rotate is enabled. Otherwise, it's been smooth sailing. If there were a time machine to send this version of the device back to reviewers in 2020, I think it would have reviewed much better. Most days, the performance feels on par with any other modern Android phone, albeit with 2 very nice 4x3 AMOLED displays. Enabling Niagara Launcher has even made this a really solid one-handed device when folded back. Broadly speaking, it feels good to use in a way that's kind of difficult to fully describe to anyone who hasn't gotten their hands on a Surface Duo yet. The flat, wide screen lends itself to be one of the best keyboard experiences on Android. The width fits my kinda large hands perfectly, and there are little things like being able to read more text in a single line, or propping it up in tent mode to easily watch the timer on my French press that feel like unique experiences that make my day easier and are only capable with the Surface Duo. That's not to say the Surface Duo is now perfect though. While a ton of the software gripes have been demolished, there are still a fair few hardware-related gripes remaining. One that keeps bugging me, and bugged me years ago as well, is how often it'll register a back gesture when scrolling up or down near the hinge. That's partly due to the flatness of the folded design, leading me to choke up on the device quite a bit for my default grip. Given the width of the screen, that usually means my thumbs are closer to the edge when scrolling a web page. That grip also has the knock-on effect of occasionally generating unwanted touch input when I brush the screen with the palm of my hand while reaching for a button on the opposite side of the screen from my hand. Another awkwardness is that the Duo still doesn't have the ability to select which display stays active by default when folded back, a feature the Duo 2 had at launch. The software seems way better than it used to be at detecting my intent, but every now and then it'll make the wrong prediction and require me to pause and double tap the screen I want to keep active before continuing on. I'll even occasionally see the device watching for the double tap at unexpected times, leading to the active display suddenly switching due to my finger placement. It doesn't happen often, but it's extremely frustrating when it does, especially since this problem never happens on my Duo 2. And on the topic of differences with its sequel, there's the unchangeable fact that the Duo 1 only has a speaker behind the left display. As a right-handed person, that makes audio feel just a bit more distant while listening to something while the device is folded. Similarly, while the device is unfolded, having the audio coming from only one direction makes watching videos on the right screen a bit more awkward. Putting all these factors together makes for some really mixed feelings about the Surface Duo. On one hand, I love the form factor, and using it on a daily basis is a complete joy. Given the opportunity to use this or my Galaxy S20 for a year, I choose the Surface Duo every time. The software has improved by leaps and bounds since it was my primary device years ago. In its current state, it looks nothing like the frustrating mess that many reviewers originally got their hands on in 2020. In fact, to judge this device by its reviews alone would be a disservice to what Microsoft has accomplished here. Yet, with the software issues mostly solved, the remaining issues that feel baked into the hardware are even more obvious. How the screen folds, feels, and stays active seem so clearly fixed in the Duo 2 that even with many more feature updates, I'm not sure how much better the Duo 1 could have gotten. And those remaining issues, while not a deal breaker for me, could make for a lot of frustrations for a lot of people. Even with that in mind, I think there are some clear reasons why the Surface Duo might be worthwhile to more than a few people, even after it stops being a good primary device. But before I get into why the Surface Duo might still be worth your attention, a word from our channel partner, Mint Mobile. So, quick question. Are you one of those folks whose cell phone plan is just way too expensive? Maybe you have a long-term contract with your service provider that locks you in for a few years by threat of massive fees if you quit early. I was definitely like that years ago, and let me tell you, it wasn't fun. Luckily, Mint Mobile is here to help you out with a different kind of cell phone plan that requires no contracts and starts for as low as $15 per month, while still providing the same great coverage as the larger cell phone carriers. While revisiting the Surface Duo itself, I've taken the device all over Chicago's north side and pitted Mint's cell bandwidth against the weight of cloud streaming via GeForce Now. And let me tell you, even with the Duo being a bit too old to make use of Mint's expansive 5G network, it didn't drop a beat. Plus, it was extremely easy to set up. The time between checking out on their website with my Surface Duo and launching a game on GeForce Now using their cell service was less than 10 minutes. Given how finicky my Surface Duo was to get service for back in 2020, the complete ease of installing one of Mint Mobile's eSIMs was a breath of fresh air. Better yet, if you're watching this video before the end of October 2023, they have a special promotion going on for new customers where all their plans are only $15 for the first 3 months. Whether you have a phone of your own or feel like it's time to upgrade, they'll have you covered either way. If you're interested, just go to trymintmobile.com/gamedata, as shown on the screen and linked in the video description for more information. To start delving into why the Surface Duo still might be worthwhile to consider, I think it's worth mentioning that, well, it's actually not a smartphone. In fact, here's how Panos Panay initially described the Surface Duo back in 2019.
I'm super clear. You're going to talk about this. You're going to talk about it as a phone, and I get that. And you're going to talk about it as a communication device, and it does both those things incredibly well, for sure. For sure, you can text, you can write, you can do what you want. But make no mistake, this product is a Surface.
While it has the hardware and functionality to be used as a smartphone, it's fundamentally something different. In fact, I think only my wife Emily, behind the camera, has the phone numbers associated with either of my Duos. As with my Surface Pro 9, they mostly have SIM cards to have internet access away from Wi-Fi. That's fundamentally different from my Fold 4, which I've used to make the occasional phone call, attend business meetings, or text folks who don't have chat apps. That might sound a bit awkward to anyone who's ever stared at the large price tag of a Duo 2 or considered one of the Surface Duo devices as an upgrade to their old smartphone, but in reality, using either device feels more akin to a pocketable dual-screen Android tablet than anything else. And I think it might be worthwhile for other folks to keep in mind while considering the Duo 1 long after Microsoft support has ended. Let's dig into that a bit more by first addressing one of Microsoft's key selling points: productivity. In my first video on the Surface Duo, I praised the device for being the one Android device on the market that really excelled at using multiple apps at the same time. That hasn't changed. Over the past few weeks with it as my primary device, it's still been as good as always for doing whatever multitasking I need it to do. Whether that's having Pocket Casts open on one display and X open on another, quickly browsing Outlook with an optimized dual screen view, or looking something up while YouTube plays off to the side. To this day, Samsung is still probably the only other brand that's made huge strides toward using multi-app functionality with its Fold line. But using split screen on my Fold 4 still feels more cumbersome than opening 2 apps at once on this 3-year-old device. At launch, the Duo also came with baked-in Surface Pen support, which continues to be amazing and has curiously expanded further to Wacom pens, or at least the pen I bought years ago for my XPS 15. All of which has made this a kinda great sketchpad over time. While not specifically optimized for Duos, apps like Clip Studio Paint and Metabang can be arranged to fit menus or references on one screen while sketching on the other. I love the screens to be just a bit larger for sketching in general, but it's still super effective if I want to quickly jot an idea down. On top of all that, there's the broadest use case that isn't going to change for as long as most apps support Android 12. That's reading. Kindle, Play Books, Shonen Jump, and even OneDrive's PDF reader all perfectly span across both displays. Like many apps out there, that's not because all of them are specifically optimized, but because their tablet views present text in a way that feels natural with the hinge. The flat, high-contrast displays look great while reading books in general. Meanwhile, the 4:3 aspect ratios of the displays feel only a touch wider than a pocket-sized novel. I could honestly see someone picking up a Surface Duo solely as a compact Android e-reader. For comments especially, it's a joy to use, and the perfect size to kick back and dig into a new series. Heck, even news articles feel better on the Duo than any other device of its size, save for maybe a mini tablet or the inner screen of a foldable. Considering that I scroll while reading, spanning an article across both displays in portrait provides this illusion of reading on a much larger tablet. It's extremely comfy, despite the large hinge gap. For tablet-y sort of productivity use cases, the Duo's kinda a perfect device that allows me to get done what I need to get done, and it being pocket-sized makes it convenient enough that I can easily travel with it as a secondary device. But, as most of y'all could probably guess, the greatest use case is probably as a retro emulation device. With its Snapdragon 855 SoC, it's the most performant Android emulation and cloud gaming device currently available under $400. It's more than capable of PS2, Wii, and GameCube emulation, though the first two might come with a few more asterisks overall. Those retro emulation chops are baked by incredibly solid 4x3 displays that will either eliminate or greatly minimize black bars seen while playing games without widescreen patches. The built-in 4G modem also gives it a leg up over other emulators in its price range. Attaching a Bluetooth controller makes services like Steam Link, PlayStation Remote Play, and GeForce Now a lot more usable without a Wi-Fi connection. Though, for services like Remote Play that have adequate portrait modes, that Bluetooth controller may not even be necessary for slower-paced games. The touch controls on those sorts of apps fit naturally on the lower display while playing. Even in Xbox cloud streaming, you can still find a small library of touch input enabled games with control schemes specifically made to be used with the Surface Duo. Unlike many devices without integrated controllers, the Surface Duo shines as a really comfortable, versatile gaming device even when I leave my controller at home. None of which is even the main reason to pick up one of these as an emulator. The main reason is for DS emulation. As I've said over the years, the only way better than the Surface Duo to play most DS games would be to get a 3DS. Even then, the Duo has larger screens, more accessible cheat codes, and a ton more quality of life features than something like Twilight Menu on the 3DS. A couple years ago, I replayed Pokemon Black on my Duo with touch controls and event items enabled, and it was a blast. As much as I enjoy my new 3DS XL, it pales in comparison to the big, beautiful screens on my Surface Duo. Like, honestly, for anyone who's been clamoring for retro emulation manufacturers to release dual-screen handhelds, this is it. Even if a company like Retroid announces a new dual-screen Android device tomorrow, it likely won't be as polished, powerful, or sleek as a Surface Duo. And that kind of brings me to my final thoughts. If the Surface Duo's viewed as just another smartphone that could replace whatever smartphone you have on hand, it's no longer really worth buying. The form factor makes it incredibly interesting, but the hardware feels more like a beta version of the Surface Duo 2, which is actually a very good, albeit expensive, smartphone. Combined with the fact that regular security updates from Microsoft have ended, there's no way I could recommend that someone pick up a Surface Duo as their primary device, even if I've largely enjoyed revisiting it over the past few weeks. That perspective seems flawed though. Unlike most other devices in the smartphone category, if I remove the 4G antennas and ability to make phone calls from the Surface Duo, its main selling points remain largely the same. Folks considering the Surface Duo these days should instead think of it more as an Android tablet that excels for specific use cases. Do you need a dedicated electronic organizer to manage meetings and quickly jump between social media accounts? The Surface Duo is for you. Do you want an Android e-reader that fits in your pocket and feels snappy to use? The Surface Duo is for you. Do you like Android emulation and have been specifically looking for a device that can handle both touch controls well and DS games as they were intended? The Surface Duo's for you. Meanwhile, if none of those main points sounded appealing, or you aren't looking for a secondary Android device in your life on top of your smartphone, then it's fine to leave the Surface Duo in the past. Though, it's worthwhile to remember that at the end of its life, the Surface Duo was actually a surprisingly good Android device. For as many times as dual screen experiences have been attempted on Android, the Surface Duo is the first time that that experience has actually yielded something more impactful than stapling a secondary display onto a standard smartphone. The form factor, use cases, and flexibility built into the device's design is something unique that I hope folks interested in consumer tech will remember fondly the next time a company dabbles in dual screen technology. Those are my thoughts though. I'd love to know yours. Looking back at the past 3 years of the Surface Duo, what's the lasting impression you have of the devices themselves? Let me know down in the comments. As always, if you found this video interesting or informative, go ahead and click the like button and then get subscribed for more dual screen content in the future. While the Surface Duo's design seems to live on via the Pixel Fold line, the Microsoft dual screen line seems to be pretty much done for now. Microsoft, please prove me wrong, but heck, given that the Duo 2 is slated to have its final updates a year from now, I might actually need to plan a similar video for it next year, but we'll see. This video was provided in part thanks to Mint Mobile providing me with 3 months of their unlimited plan for free to use with my Duo without disrupting any of my other devices. And I've been having a great time using it. Their service has been great, and there will be a link in the description if you'd like to try them out for yourself while supporting the channel just a little bit. That's gonna be all for this video though. Until next time, catch you later.